Okay.
Okay, officially I can welcome you to the Ask Me Anything Live for the month of December. How is it already December?
I know,
And
it's
way through.
crazy.
It is crazy. So we are Monday the 13th. So if you're watching this live, welcome. If you're watching the recording, welcome. We'll see. I know December gets busy for people, but we'll see if a few folks trickle in. I'm going to open the chat and I see both Faith and Sherry on. And so Faith and Sherry, if either of you have questions that I can support you with, I'm really happy to get started and dig into that.
Yeah, I definitely do, but I'm happy to. Yeah. Okay. So it's about, so it's a legal question, but it's about investing. Well, okay, I'll just explain it. I'll try and give you like the synopsis. So I invested some money with a Bitcoin miner that was referenced through a friend, and turns out my friend's account was hacked. So I was worried it was a scam. But anyway, so this person mined all this money for me, like turned it into a large sum. And then they were like, you need to pay me 10% before I'll give you the money. And I was like, I don't have 10%, like give me the profit and then I'll pay you. And they're like, well, then you could just run off with my money. And I'm like, well, then you could run off with my money. I'm like, I was talking to one of my life coaches and she was like, maybe you can like send an agreement or something to like have that like, hey, I'll pay you if you give me my money. And it's like a considerable size that I invested, and then an even larger that it mined into. And so I originally I just tried to get the money back from the bank and they were like, no, we're not going to get. And then I went filed a police report and the police didn't do anything. And so
I
went through like a bunch of different channels and then they kept trying to reach out to me and I just stopped contacting them because I wasn't sure if they were legit or not. And I was like, oh, okay, like maybe I should have done more research. But anyways, still have, I looked them up because I met them through Instagram and they are still doing Bitcoin mining or whatever. Yeah. And so I'm like, they might be a real person, but like I'm not going to give them any money until I have my money. So
yeah. Ooh, okay. So a couple things. One, I'm so sorry that happened. Two, let's be clear that I am not an expert in the Bitcoin investment world, but we can talk about some contracting basics. Three, this technically cannot be legal advice because it's in a group format, right? So other people have the opportunity to get educated and learn from this as well. But I'll walk you through a scenario that I, would cover if, for example, you were my client. So a couple things, one is it's so tricky to put the horse back in the barn, right? If there wasn't a contract to begin with, right, then it makes it more challenging to resolve this on the back end. Were there any written exchanges with the Bitcoin miner when you went to hire them? Like, do you have anything in writing, or was there an understanding about what they would be paid to do this service for you? No. Got it. So I'm curious, when you went to this person who it sounds like was a connection through a friend, is that correct? What was your understanding of how they might be paid?
Yeah, it was, so how it happened was the person was like, my friend had been talking about, hey, just message this person and they'll walk you through step by step. And hold on, just moving. And so I went to do that step by step, and there was no agreement. There was no like, this is how it's done. It was just like, do this, do this, do this. And I didn't stop and say, okay, like, what's the whole process? How do you get paid? I just like followed her because like my friend, someone I know personally, but on Instagram was like, oh, this is so amazing. Just go do it. Just do it. And so I just did it. I just dove in and didn't like get a whole, like, how do you get paid? What's the money? Cause like, I was like, how does this work? And she was just like, do this. And like, I was the one putting the money into the Bitcoin and all that stuff. But like, it wasn't until like my money had mined that she was like, oh, you owe me 10%. And I was like, I can't give me your money and then my money, and then I'll give you 10%.
Let me ask you this. Could you transfer her 10% of your Bitcoin earnings? Like in Bitcoin?
Asked her, I think I asked her that, like, I'll just give you the money, like, but then she was like, oh, there's a fee. And I was like, but the thing is I was like, oh, how about if I pay you half now, half later? And she was like, oh, we can do that. And I'm like, if there's a 10% fee, then I shouldn't be able to do half now, half later. Like, it should be, like, it just didn't seem legit. Like, it seems kind of shady. And so I was worried. Yeah. So I asked her that, and she said, like, do whatever you can. And I was like, I'll give you $50. And she was like, I can't do anything with that. And I was like, well, that's what I can give you right now. So
can I ask you, how much was the overall investment?
15 grand.
Okay. Where do you know where this individual's based, and where are you based?
I'm in Oregon, and I don't know where they are. Like, obviously jumped, like, I'm like trying to not beat myself up about it, but like, I know it happened to my sister. It happens to so many people right now. So
well, and this is, so a couple things. One, it's a very new and obviously evolving area, including within the law. Two, there are a lot of people trying to get into investing in that area. And so there's also going to be a lot of scams that happen as people try to do that. Like, opportunists are everywhere. COVID, they've just come out of the woodworks, right? Trying to scam people about cures and all this other thing. So the FTC has had to watch that very, very carefully. And welcome to Amy. I want to acknowledge that both Amy and Sherry are on the call, and we'll get to your questions here next. So don't beat yourself up too bad about it. It's, unfortunately, it could be a really painful learning lesson depending on how it works itself out. The thing that I recognize in the world of, really finances generally, certainly in business, is that we are going to have some painful financial lessons, and they will make us that much wiser next time around when we do invest another time or do something else that looks similar. From a legal remedy standpoint, you could collect her information, like find out, and, you could run some searches online. You could probably hire a PI to do this or whatever. You could get her individual information, find out where she lives. If she's stateside, it'll generally be easier than if she's somewhere else in the world internationally, right? Otherwise, you're looking at international legal procedures. But you could bring a small claims court action against her, even if she's in another state. You'd have to figure out how to do that and individually, because what you're looking for is a court that has jurisdiction to make a decision around, that scenario. It's going to be like I said, a newer area of law, but there clearly was something that happened there where money changed hands, and now you are obviously left essentially without a remedy until, you get something worked out with her. And so it might be that threatening a lawsuit is enough to get her to respond. Right? It could be that you hire legal counsel in her state. Maybe, it's something that could even be filed in a local court, like a district court or a state court. And you bypass a small claims court. Small claims court, depending on the jurisdiction, are generally going to handle disputes up to sometimes 20, sometimes 15, sometimes $10,000, depending on what's at issue, right? And the jurisdiction itself. But generally you're within the range that could still be handled probably by a small claims court, which means that you don't have to hire an attorney. You could file a proceeding directly against her, but depending on jurisdiction, it also means that you have to show up there for your day in court. And that could be problematic, but there might be a courier service. There might be somebody else that's willing to assist you with the initial filings. That could be enough to get her to respond and take it seriously. So, when people are caught in a dispute, and there's Daniel. Hi, Daniel. Welcome to Eileen as well. I generally like to talk about, obviously, relative bargaining power of the parties, as well as leverage, the concept of leverage. How do you, when somebody's not responding fairly or responding in the way that you would like, and I'm not interested in an inequitable outcome, right? She did this thing. There's some value in her helping you mine Bitcoin and invest in it. And, it sounds like create even more, than what you initially invested. So she should be paid something, right? The problem is you guys were not clear on what that was before you started. And so now you're left at the back end trying to figure out what is an equitable outcome. And so what I look at is like, what would make the parties whole, right? So what would compensate her for her time enough that, that she's willing to go, okay, that was fair. And I feel good about, because generally, unless somebody's like a really problematic human being or toxic, and I agree that there are those people out there, but generally people want to just be treated fairly, and they'll recognize when that threshold is met if somebody's really earnest in being upfront and honest and fair with them. So I don't know if from her standpoint, that looks like a couple $100s, right? 10% would be 1,500 if that was the.
Oh no, it's
10% of the.
How much I invested, but it's 10% of what I earned, which is 90,000. So she wants $9,000, and I'm like, I can't give you $9,000.
No, and I don't think that depending, how much time would you say was involved in her services or support or however you categorize it?
It was like over text message. It was like 2 days.
So like a handful of hours, maybe.
Yeah.
So what you could do is reach out to her and say, look, I'm really interested in something that feels fair. I know we didn't have a clear understanding about how this started. I would have never hired you if I understood that I was going to have to pay you, $9,000 or whatever. I don't have 9,000. Like the other thing about Bitcoin is it's not even like investing in the stock market, right? You do not have, like, even from an equity standpoint, it's not like the ease with which you can liquidate that money and have it actually be money in your pocket is different, right? And so saying like, oh, well, you have $90,000 in Bitcoin doesn't necessarily mean you have $90,000. Right. So it's not like, it's different. So you could try to have a discussion with her around like, look, here's what feels fair. It was, your support via text over a couple hours a day. I'm willing to pay you, like, could you pay her $500?
Yeah.
She could have been just so offended by $50 that she's like, look, I'm just unwilling to even work with you, because maybe that is offensive to her. If you had $15,000 to invest, you probably have $500 to pay for a Bitcoin mining service, right? The problem again goes back to the fact that you didn't have this discussion up front. So it may be that you need to come back to her with an offer that actually feels fair, that she gets paid in cash, and you get some guarantee in writing before you pay that about how she's going to release access to you for the Bitcoin investment or whatever, however that works, right? You definitely want to make sure you have a written agreement that is clear on all the terms before you pay any money, so that you're not leaving issues unresolved. Okay. The other thing is, if she's just not willing to budge on that, then, this concept of leverage comes in. How do you incentivize her to become more reasonable and meet you in the middle? That this is where threats of lawsuits, threats of hiring local legal counsel come in. But before you can do that, you have to know who she is, where she's located, what's her personal jurisdiction, and have answers to those questions. Okay.
Beautiful. Okay. Right. Thank you so much. That helps. Like, just knowing, I feel
totally
feel better.
And the other thing I will say generally for folks that are here and for anybody that watches the recording, difficult conversations, we're all human. We all get ourselves into difficult scenarios at one point or another. Like, don't beat yourself up. It just happens, right? We do certain things and then we're like, oh, that didn't work, or I really didn't understand this, and now I understand it. But the book Difficult Conversations, it's written by the folks that put on the program on negotiation at Harvard. So Difficult Conversations, I think it actually has a reference to pawn on the cover. It's written by Sheila Heen, Bruce Patton, William Ury, Douglas Stone, a series of people. They're brilliant. They're just phenomenal. Go get that book. It will help you in this scenario and in any other difficult scenarios, whether it's personal life, business, investing, whatever. But, we, especially in finances and business, we have loads of opportunity for difficult conversations. And to the extent we can handle them well, get really good at recognizing what the interests of the other party are and how to have conversations that allow for the room and the opinions and the beliefs of both sides. it literally is money back in your pocket. It will save you time, energy, heartache, lots of money, lots of legal risk. So
beautiful.
it's my
Thank
final.
you so much, Heather.
Yeah,
Thank
you're
you.
welcome. Good luck, Faith.
Thank you.
All righty. Hello to Daniel, Eileen, Amy, and Sherry. Do we have any other, and sorry, that was supposed to be difficult conversations with an S. Do we have any other questions today that I can help with? And you're welcome. There's Sherry. Okay. Sherry, I see your question in chat. How do you minimize blurring the lines between using shared home, family, internet for business, home office uses when it doesn't make financial or technical sense to have 2 internet services at the same property? Yes. Assuming I have 1 room I dedicate as a home office, that's good that you're clear on that. I understand why we should always keep personal and business account and activities separate. Yes, even if we only have a simple proprietorship DBA. So a couple things, Sherry, that you're talking about. One, you're talking about like business tracking and records keeping from the standpoint of taxes and obviously business management. Let's be clear that from a liability perspective, if you are a sole proprietor, which I think is what you mean when you say simple proprietorship, if you're a sole proprietor, from a liability standpoint, this doesn't matter. It's irrelevant because as a sole proprietor without a formal legal entity, you do not have a business set up on your behalf that contains that liability, right? So the whole purpose of a legal entity, whether it's an LLC, whether it's a C corporation, et cetera, is to contain that business liability to your investment in the business and protect your personal assets. But from the standpoint of record keeping, which is super important and becomes increasingly important if you do have a legal entity set up, is that that you track this stuff. And generally what this looks like is taking, because I'm in the same position, right? Like even pre-COVID, I had a home office and I agree, we've got internet that serves both our home and our personal, our personal consumption of those services and my business. So I will allocate a percentage of use, right? So primarily evening use of the internet or cable or whatever else is going to be personal. Daytime use is almost 100% exclusively my business, right? And so you can look at your use of things like phone, internet, cable, etc., and allocate percentages, which is what I would recommend. And if you have a CPA or an accountant, just walk through the scenario with them. They can help you come up with those percentages, and then you allocate a percentage of your costs to your business, right? So that's my recommendation. And then, yes, and then you already make the point of having a dedicated space. Like you can see, even though my kids come in here and get into that office door, this is my office. Like it has all my business books. There's a sofa there, but I have a huge desk that I'm sitting at. This is 100% my office. And that way you've got dedicated square footage within your home that is allocated to an office space, which is really important if you are expensing any portion of your home for business use. So great question. I hope that helped. And pop back into the chat if you need any clarifications on that. Hello to Eileen and Amy and Daniel. Any other questions that we can support you with today?
I have a question, Heather.
Hi, Daniel. How are you?
Hi, it's great to see you again.
Good to see you too.
I'm in Atlanta now, so the time zone difference is a bit more easier for me. So
I was going to say, are you? Yeah, because otherwise you'd be like, what, pretty late evening over there.
Yeah, it would be, yeah.
Good.
So
how can I help?
My question is, with the wonderful materials that you shared with, I use them for, firstly on helping my mother, and so they're embedded on her website or they're being embedded. But it's then also my other website, but I don't want to cross any boundaries with you, because especially since you say you spot them wherever they are in the internet. It's like, what do you think is the fair usage? So for example, my girlfriend, if I wanted to support her and use those templates with her, not directly involved with the business, but I'd like to support her and move forward. Is that okay? Or is that sort of a, hold on, it's only those businesses that I'm directly related to as well?
Yeah, totally. I really appreciate you asking. So, a couple things to keep in mind generally is that and I have lots of clients that actually either have multiple businesses or multiple brands, if you will, associated with the same business. So for example, they've got one that is exclusively, coaching. They have another that's exclusively consulting. It's related, but, different ways of delivering the work. Or they have, an online presence that has multiple websites that are actually all under the same umbrella, but related to different aspects of their work. That's very common. And that is okay. I'm comfortable with somebody who has multiple things going on in their business using those website protection package documents in that way. But what you're talking about where, they get extended to other people is a little bit outside the typical use, because generally I want a direct relationship with whoever is consuming that website protection package so that they get the support necessary to, including the education, to engage in their online business practices the right way. And then, it also means that they're more likely to actually do it, take it seriously, update the documents, etc., if they've invested a little bit in their own legal support. So I'm comfortable with what you've done supporting your mom and your own business, like your own work. I'd probably encourage you outside of that, if you've got other people that you think could really benefit, is provide a direct referral or introduce them and have, allow me to support them directly.
Yeah, that's right. That's what I thought, but I just wanted to see, make sure I'm clear on where your boundaries are and stuff.
Totally. No, and I appreciate you asking. The other thing, because I know that somewhere back a few weeks ago, we had swapped messages about getting the UK version of the documents to you if your business is UK based.
Yeah.
And so that's still on my radar. You're still going to have really good protection from what we have. There might just be a few provisions that require an update once you see those other documents. And I just apologize. I've been so underwater between, COVID and my kiddos, quote unquote, I joke, they're back in school without really 100% of the time being back in school. They're like, my daughter is home again. This is like week 7 of, 12 weeks back in school, where because she's 4 and any little sniffle or cold that she gets, she can't be in school. We have to pass another COVID test. We have to keep her home until she's feeling better, right? All of the above. Anyway, so it just means that everything is taking me longer. I'm trying to hire in my business right now, both project attorneys and new VAs. And so I'm trying to get on top of the mountain of work. I have not forgotten about you, and I appreciate very much your patience.
No worries. It's all good. You also wanted to share an affiliate link, because if I'm sort of if we got your thing on there, I'd like to sort of
totally.
There's link, and I can send them on, doing the keeping the joint venture mentality going in.
If you'll email me, what I'll do is I'll send you my backend link where you can sign yourself up inside of my Infusionsoft program, and you'll be flagged as an affiliate. And then I can create those links for you and email you so that you've got the link to share, and that way it gets tracked through you.
Okay. So best put email there, Heather.
Yeah, if you just want to drop me an email, then I'll add you, because it's just a little manual thing I have to do on the back end, and then you'll get kind of an automated, you'll get the link initially to sign up, and then I just have to go review some information, and then I have to flag you a little differently in my Infusionsoft system. So it's all good. Cool. But yeah, I'd be really happy to do that. And thank you very much for sharing my work.
Yeah, super duper.
Yeah, good. Well,
otherwise, I've got a filing structured as in the was it the 5 buckets you talk about? So I've got that, so that helps, and it's sort of great organized in that way. And then we've gone through the templates you've given us, and it's gone through your training there, so that's kind of all integrated. The mother did try to get an English lawyer to check over them, but they sort of they all get sort of complicated with each other, so I'd far rather have your English version, because I think it probably expands their mindset a little bit as well.
Okay, well, let me yes, I will make that a priority. Let's be clear that this week I am so swamped. It's like wrapping up a ton of the done for you legal projects for some of my clients. But what I may do is share, you've got access to like a doc compare system, like Google Docs or Microsoft Word or something, where you can compare versions.
Yeah.
Because what I could do is just shoot you over the UK version. If you're okay running that comparison yourself, you'll see what the red line changes are between the UK and the US version of those documents.
Okay, that'd be great.
And that way you could be like, oh, this seems applicable. I'll just add this language into your current set. That way you don't have a ton of work to do. It's just going to be a few updates throughout the documents.
Yeah, that's perfectly good. I'll go through that.
Okay. All right. So if you're okay with that, then I will just send those over.
Marvelous.
Okay. Awesome.
Thank you, Heather.
You're welcome. Good to see you, Daniel.
I'll listen to what others have got.
Yeah, totally. Absolutely. Okay. Eileen, great question. ADA compliance. This is a hot button, you guys. I literally just completed 3 hours. Well, I mean, I'm in the middle of 45 hours of CLEs because it's my compliance period this year. But I did 3 hours of training specific to the ADA. So this is really fresh in my mind, and I'm really happy to walk through it on this call. I just want to pop in and acknowledge Forrest. Great to see you again, Forrest. I'm so happy you're here. Amy, and Sherry as well. You guys, obviously, if you want to pop any additional questions into the chat, or you can go live, but let's tackle this ADA issue and then we can move on. And also, I just want to, as a heads up, I probably can't go all the way to noon. I've got both my kiddos for lunch period today. So we'll go as close as we can to the top of the hour and try to handle as many questions as possible, but I'll let you know when I have to pop off. And then if we haven't addressed anybody's questions, you can always just pop an email over to me and I'll try to get back to you via email. Okay, Amy's got a question, which I see next. Okay, Eileen, so for ADA compliance, basically what's happening is the challenge with ADA compliance, and for people that don't know, this is the American with Disabilities Act, which tells us it's a law that says, look, if there is a place of public accommodation, we cannot discriminate against people with disabilities and have them in any way basically have a less than experience, right? A different experience than people who are who do not have disabilities. And so the challenge has been that the ADA was written before the internet was a thing, right? So, and it's still the books on the law, like it is still the law on the books. This is the fascinating thing, is that while there have been other updates to laws that are related, they have not yet updated this regulation to say, here's how it applies or does not apply in the online world of business. And so basically, while we have the ADA, we do not have a regulation on the books that says, here is what is required of online businesses in regards to compliance with the ADA. What we instead have is the Department of Justice enforcing a set of rules that it has just decided kind of apply. And they're called the, what are they? Website compliance. It's WCAG version 2.0. You might have heard of these, and let me just see if I can Google a link really quick. These are website design. Yeah, WCAG 2.0. Let me, if you just Google that, Web Content Accessibility Guidelines is what that acronym stands for. That's generally what the Department of Justice has said applies in the online business space. And then there have been some federal courts that have interpreted some of those decisions by the Department of Justice and have essentially upheld this set of rules and these guidelines, the WCAG version 2.0. One second. What, Ms. Henley? We're having very important questions like, where are the chocolate chips? Which my 4-year-old, I know, she's so funny. My kids are definitely my children. Like, they came out just loving chocolate, but she knows what the chocolate chip bag looks like even more than I do. She goes and opens the cupboards and is like it's the first thing she spots. So we'll see if she can survive 30 minutes without the chocolate chips. Anyway, so these rules, these guidelines, the Web Content Accessibility Guidelines 2.0 are actually written by a private organization, but have essentially become the adopted model for compliance when it comes to online business. Now, there's a legal question of, does all online business constitute a place of public accommodation, right? Because the ADA says, these rules apply to you if you have a business that includes a public place of accommodation, right? And so that has been a question of law that certain courts have interpreted by saying, yes, any website is a public place of accommodation. And other circuit courts have kind of left some gray area about whether they're willing to go that far and interpret that in that way. So what it means is that businesses, especially small businesses, are kind of in this no man's land, because the other thing is the ADA, when it was originally written, applied to businesses with more than 15 employees. So in the past, what I used to say is like largely businesses that have less than 15 employees were somewhat insulated. But instead, what we're seeing nowadays is that any business doing business online is at risk for these lawsuits. The plaintiff's bar, right? There's some really good things about lawyers and the legal industry. And then there are some challenges that come with the industry and what we're seeing right now, which and I'm not necessarily saying it's a bad thing. Plenty of businesses are facing challenges when it comes to ADA compliance, because one, it's evolving area of law. It's evolving very quickly from the standpoint of enforcement. It is a regulation that allows for both governmental enforcement and private enforcement. So what we're seeing is a rash of lawsuits across the country against businesses of all sizes online that are not compliant with these guidelines and are not making their websites, even when they're exclusively an online business, making them accessible to those with disabilities. So when you think of somebody that has had vision loss or is hearing disabled, right? And you walk through your own website, you're going to really, really quickly see some glaring problems with accessibility, right? Especially for most businesses that are of the size that I support. And so what this means, and we can talk about a couple of hot button issues, ways that you can improve your site. One, start off with doing, I'm just going to call it a tab test. Go to your website, open it up and see if you can because think of somebody who has a disability where they are not using a mouse and they just need to tab through your content, or they have a device that allows them to tab through their content. And usually what's happening with somebody, let's just say who's hearing disabled, is they are going to have a reader technology that's overlaid on your website that's going to read your website to them, right? And they may just be tabbing from section to section or button to button. And so you need to understand, does the tab does your website even pass the tab test? Can you tab through all of your menu items? Can you tab through your website sections? And these are generally going to be live links, right? And can somebody navigate your business website that way? And second of all, if you were to overlay some sort of reading technology on your website, how does your website read? Is it understandable from the standpoint of this technology that's going to help like a vision impaired person read your website? And I'm sorry, I think I initially said hearing disabled. Right. So for hearing disabled, you obviously want, if you're doing video content, like I have a podcast, and while my website is certainly not perfect, I do create a transcript of every podcast so that for somebody that's hearing disabled, they could read it if they wanted to. They could go to my show notes page, and you can do that kind of thing, like a transcript for a video or an audio file, right? Otter AI. There's some others that are basically free. I think I pay $8 a month for the upgraded version. So, my encouragement, because some of this starts to get fairly technical, like when you're talking about alt tags, do people here know what alt tags are? So whenever you upload a photo on your website, right? Raise your hand if you've got lots of photos on your website, whether it's, specific to the content that you're creating, or whether they're illustrative, or maybe they're like, for me, I've got pages where I just have like a client feature section, right? How is somebody who is vision disabled and listening to a reading technology that overlays your website, how are they going to know that they're looking at a section of client photos, right? So it's through the tags, the way that your photos are identified. So when you go into the back end of WordPress, you have an option when you upload a media file to create this alt tag, right? And what it is, it's an alternative text tag, right? So that if somebody's not looking at the image itself, they actually get access to this alternative text. Have you ever opened a website or opened an email where the image didn't show up, but you saw this little text tag that says, you know, whatever, man on top of a mountain or whatever, some description kind of random like that? That was an alternative text tag, right? So what it means is thinking through from the standpoint of the way a website needs to function for a hearing or vision disabled person to be able to use it in an accessible way. What are some changes that we can make that makes your website more readable, makes them understand? I mean, if you literally just close your eyes and imagine not seeing any of the photos on your website, how would a reader read those photos in a way that describes adequately and properly what the role of that photo is? Is it essential? Is it just, you know, a client photo? Like, and then tagging all of your content in a way that helps your website be more understandable, more consumable to somebody with disabilities, right? So the legal question of, are you obligated to comply? The trending answer is yes, regardless of the size of business. And more, especially in light of COVID, the last couple of years, I think without a doubt, the decisions across the board will be trending in the direction of any online website is a public place of accommodation. And we just have to expect that. The question from my standpoint will be, because there's lots of compliance companies online that will help big businesses deal with this, right? But some of the case law, like, you know, a pharmacy that is, you know, I think a fairly large pharmacy that has pharmacies mostly on the East Coast and numerous locations, was held liable, Target as well, for not having an accessible website related to its physical location. But these are businesses that put millions of dollars into website development and did not address accessibility. There are also businesses that are much more widely, you know, they've got a lot larger target audience. So the question remains to be seen, how strictly will this be enforced against really small businesses? There are mom and pop businesses that have been caught up in this type of litigation, and the lawsuits against online business owners has gone from literally a few hundred, like back in 2015, 2016, to like over 4,000. These are known lawsuits filed on the books as of 2020 or 2021. This does not even include the thousands upon thousands additional. And can you guys hear me? I'm getting a little feedback in my, you still can hear me, thumbs up. Thousands upon thousands of demand letters sent. So most businesses don't get sued first, they get a demand letter first, right? Saying, you know, I represent, you know, a plaintiff who has standing, they have some disability, and your website is not accessible to them. And here are the problems that we see. And the problem with enforcement under this set of rules and regulations is that attorney fees are available to the plaintiffs. And so it becomes a much more expensive endeavor if you think that you want to fight one of these lawsuits. Most of them get settled before they ever get to court, right? And there are some strategies for dealing with that. But the, you know, some of the things to think about, especially from a small business standpoint, is what are steps that we can all take that have accessibility in mind? What are ways that we can make our websites more accessible, right? So for one, you know, and I'm just going to do a quick list because these are things that you can be thinking about, especially, yeah. And Kathleen, welcome. That's right. As a person with low vision, she's very interested in this. Yes. This is also why I asked for closed captions on Zoom. And I need to look into like how that is done, Kathleen. So we'll put that on the list, right? Number one is the tab test, right? Do a tab test through your website to see, can you tab your way through your website. 2 is really look at your alternative text tags, right? So go look at all of your photos, go through what's listed in your media files in the back end of your website and see, can you improve upon the existing alternative text tags that you have? Because this is a real hot button. 3 is what is called, I think like vision or contrast. Think of like from a vision standpoint, think about the contrast. And there's some standard contrast level. I can't remember what they call it. Some contrast level for text on the background. If you're reading, a moderately or light blue text, hi Kathleen, good to see you. And it's against a similar, maybe a different color background, but similar tone, right? That's very different than reading black text on white background or white text on black background that are high contrast. So you want to think about the contrast level and your text size, right? So are you creating text on your website at a size that makes it more readable? I intentionally did that. Like my new website, actually, in my opinion, has quite large text. And for the most part, I think pretty decent contrast. Like I said, I'm adding transcripts to all of my podcasts, right? So again, if you are doing video work or audio files, can you add transcripts to everything, right? Can you incorporate that in? And through automation, hopefully the answer is yes. And then finally, what Kathleen has asked about is when you are using third-party platforms like YouTube or Zoom or some of these other services, how can we turn on transcription features or use an additional app or piece of software to also provide real-time live transcription, right? Especially if you're using third-party platforms. That is a point of law. That is a legal issue that has not yet been addressed in our legal system. So there is no authority right now on that either being mandatory or problematic. It is problematic. Let's be clear, it's problematic, but being a mandatory point for businesses to address, I think that will be coming next. I think we'll see it first apply. Okay, give mommy a few minutes. Okay. I think it will first apply to any online real estate that you quote unquote own. And then next, we're going to start to see some decisions made on what happens when you are using third-party platforms to also produce your content, right? So those are the list of things that I would look at just there in the notes and things that you can do on your own, right? I'm talking about baby steps that we can start to think about and change the nature of even how our small business websites and small business services show up online. Okay, so hopefully that was helpful. It's I know it's a lot to think about. Eileen, was that helpful?
Yeah, one quickie. So if you have a blog, do you have to make that into audio?
That's a great question. Not that you'd have to make it into audio. What you'd want to make sure is the way that it's written, that somebody could find it. So again, getting back to the tab test, if somebody doesn't have vision, they likely have a reader technology, right? There's like Chrome reader. There's I think a Microsoft version. There's several major reading, I can't remember what they're called, reading apps that basically, you put into your browser or you have installed on your website. And when you hit a website, they're going to read for you what's on the website. And the screen reader, there we go. Thank you, Kathleen. I know I was missing a word. Screen reading technology, where that needs to overlay, it needs to be able to function on your website. And this is where thinking about even the way that you title sections of your website, making sure that your header tags, this is another one from a tagging standpoint, that your header and title tags are clearly tagged and clearly describe the content that's about to follow. That way, if somebody was tabbing between those titles, they could understand, are they in a section that's relevant to them, or are they going to, keep tabbing forward? So making sure, it's really about clarity, right? Making sure that you have titles, that you have content that allows a screen reader to function on your site. So that's what I would be thinking about, Eileen, because you don't need to create, I mean, if you wanted to, that would be amazing, but you don't need to separately create an audio, because that is what the screen reader technology already does. But the reverse of that, right? If you are creating audio, there's really easy ways now through automated technology to create a text version of that, so that for somebody who is hearing disabled, they would be able to have the visual version. And that's not something I think that we have technology that will do in real time for. That's where you just need to, drop your audio or video files into an app like otter.ai and just have the transcript created for you.
Okay.
All right.
Thanks.
Yeah, great question. Really, really relevant and timely. And, one that while it's going to be painful for some small businesses to learn this lesson, as an industry, as a field, we need to be trending in the right direction. And so having awareness around this is really important. Okay. And then I know up above, we had a question from Amy. If I'm using a different overarching name to manage my Airbnb listings, do I need a different business license? Will it be in the state where I live or the states where the properties are? Does it need separate entity structure? Can I operate as a sole proprietor? Okay, great question, Amy. So you're getting into obviously some like local regulatory issues, real estate issues. My quick overview is, while I have real estate experience, I'm not going to be an expert on the Airbnb business model, but a couple things to keep in mind. Generally, you're going to want to be aware of, state and local level regulations that govern Airbnb and govern rental properties in general, like especially like certain locations, right? There have to be certain disclosures. Certain neighborhoods may not permit vacation properties or rental properties within the neighborhood. So if you've got any restrictive covenants in place, like you'd want to be aware of all of this, anything that's applicable specifically to the property and to the location where the property is based. Generally, from a real estate perspective, if you can I ask you a couple of questions? Are you the owner of these properties? Like you're investing in real estate, buying up these properties and then putting them on the market as Airbnb properties? Is that what's happening? And I'll scroll down. Looks like you might have typed in the chat. Yes. Okay. So generally, when you're talking about real estate ownership, because I have done a fair amount of real estate work here in Washington, the generally accepted strategy, especially from a liability perspective, is that you create what is called an LLC holding company, right? You literally, it's a little bit like a business. You want to contain liability within that business and in that legal entity as much as possible. The same is true of real estate. If you're investing in a piece of real estate, especially if it's not like a principal home for you, right? Our homes, there are certain protections under law that apply to a home or a homestead. But, even then, some people still put their own real estate, like their own primary home, into a business entity, into an LLC model. But for the rest of us who are a little bit more normal, not quite as high wealth, if you are buying properties, and this is, a pattern for you, you're going to want to look into creating LLC holding companies, which is that you just literally, build into your budget. If you're buying, a $200,000 or $300,000 piece of property, or a $500,000 or $600,000 piece of property, depending on where you're investing, that you set aside a couple grand and you create an LLC in that state that houses that property from a real estate liability and ownership perspective. So that's one way to contain your liability. Two, certain states, depending on where you live, have what are called a series LLC. So you can create a series LLC and handle certain of your investments that way. They don't exist in every state. So again, this is going to be jurisdiction dependent, but if you're going to buy up 20 homes in the state of Illinois or whatever, you might look into a series LLC and see whether that saves you money, allows you to keep it all under one overarching umbrella, and then you invest in individual properties within that. So just a couple of things to think about. But one, you're going to be dealing with local regulations, having to look up within each state where you invest, what regulations apply to rental properties, managing, owning, listing them, whether they're permitted in certain neighborhoods, because sometimes they're not. And then, within that, you're looking at state law for strategies around either LLCs or property ownership from the standpoint of containing liability, right? And Amy, what state are you based in? Because some people will create like a, a company in their own state that's kind of the umbrella company, and then have others branch out from that. But you would be wanting to get state specific advice, which means that I'd really recommend that you connect with a real estate attorney in your home state to help you put that strategy together.
Yeah, I had a lot of my daughter, a lot of background noises. Sorry about that. Yeah, I'm in California, but I have, property in like Tennessee and Florida. So like, I'm just wondering, like, how does that work? If, my plan is to have them in the LLC for each property, eventually, but having like an overarching kind of like, is it kind of like a property management or different? It's like a separate holding LLC on top of that. For each property underneath. I know you talked about series LLC, but I don't think it's available.
Okay. Yeah, it is. There are what are called like holding companies, right? That's an LLC holding company for real estate. Those are really common. So it may just be that you're setting up an individual LLC related to each property, especially when you're crossing state boundaries. So you'll just want to check on that. But even people who heavily invest in real estate, especially commercial, but also residential, if they're using those residential properties as rentals exclusively, do generally want to house one piece of property within a single LLC, because they don't want liability from that property transferring over and impacting other resources, other properties, right? Other areas of their business. And so that is the reason why LLC holding companies are really popular for real estate. They're relatively inexpensive to set up. They're generally, from a management perspective, they have more flexible management and so requirements. And so, if this is your strategy, you do want to get some local legal counsel to help you figure it out, but then you're going to be looking at state specific laws as well. Okay, I know we've got a couple of other questions. I hope that helps, Amy. Yeah, totally. Depending on where you're based, I may have some resources for you, including within the real estate world. So you're welcome to email me if you want to explore getting a referral, or even like a guy that I connected with the other day is like, all he does is teach people about investing in real estate. He'd probably have an answer to this question because he does it, I think, throughout the US. Okay, let's see. And I'd be happy to put you in touch with him as a resource. Sherry says, you mentioned allocating a percentage of internet service used for biz. What if I have an LLC and there are other family members using the internet service for their personal use during the same hours? Yeah, that happens at my house too, right? Same scenario. I still am allocating a percentage, and I've got multiple LLCs, allocating a percentage to each LLC and a percentage to home use, right? So that'd be my recommendation, but you could always, one, check with your own accountant or CPA. Two, if you need a referral to an accountant or CPA, let me know. What if I have to do an emergency service fix for a client outside of my normal business hours? Portion of my reserved. And I'm not sure what you mean by that. Emergency surge service, like how that applies. Is this part of the same discussion or different question? Tracking start and end times. Yeah, I'm sorry. I'm just not clear on your second question, what that means about what if you have to do an emergency service. Is it about allocating? Is it about charging? I'm not sure. Okay. You have real estate consequences when you go to sell. If you claim home office square footage and bills versus just deducting business expenses. Yeah, I'm not sure. That could be a state specific issue. I think, real estate consequences when you go to sell if you claim home office space. I'm not sure how that impacts your ability to sell. Senior complain about ease of use. Yes, interfaces aren't intuitive to them. There are probably some overlap between lack of familiarity and physical disability, whether merit technologies. Yes. So one of the questions back on this ADA issue and website accessibility, I actually submitted my site to one of these companies. There are companies that help businesses become compliant in these areas. What I am looking to learn, which I will put my own business through, this this process to see what I can do on my own to upgrade my online presence to make it more accessible is, are there services that are available to meet the needs of small businesses, or are they largely just tailored to large corporations? I think probably the latter. I think probably we have a lot of services that are offering fairly expensive services to fix these issues. Because we do have companies in the US that literally spend, millions of dollars on their businesses. And I'm seeing we've got both Marilyn, welcome to Marilyn, welcome. And another, let's see, no, the other hand, I think, oh, Kathleen, yes, you've got a hand up. That, there are corporate services tailored to large corporations to fix this. What I'm going to try to explore and figure out is, are there services that help very small businesses address this, right? We're talking about businesses that make $100,000 or less, or, several $100,000 or $1 million. That's still a tight budget from a business perspective, right? So are there services available to help small businesses meet this compliance issue? I'm not clear on that yet. So I am trying to explore options and create some resources around that. Okay, Sherry says it's the same discussion. If I have to fix a website on Sunday night that's down and there's a deadline to get it up by Monday, 8 a.m. Oh, you're talking about just, again, allocating a percentage of cost. Yeah, I probably wouldn't get that nitpicky. I don't know if you were to receive an IRS audit, if they're going to be like, prove to me all the hours that you spent, streaming personal shows versus using the internet for business. But use your ethical best guess around how to allocate that. And then over time, you can observe whether or not you need to make adjustments to those percentages. That would be my recommendation. And then obviously, work with a CPA or an accountant directly if you have questions around how to expense that, how to categorize it, etc. Okay. Kathleen and Marilyn, I know I'm so overdue for you. We can chat and we can also connect separately regarding creating those contracts.
Yeah, I just wondered if they were created and that's something that you were selling that I missed, or if they're not ready yet.
Not yet. So I've got, okay, Marilyn, part of my struggle, I'm actually in the process of trying to hire. And sorry, I'm getting additional. Oh,
sorry, it's me.
No, that's okay. I don't know if other people are going to be able to hear. Part of it, Marilyn, is so generally when I'm drafting contracts, right, I have a whole database that I work from, and I have some that are going to be largely close and some that, Daniel, you're welcome. I see your email just popped in. Some that are going to require still a bit more tweaking. I'm in the process because my schedule has been absolutely insane, trying to mom full-time basically, and also run my business, hiring, and I'm losing my VA. So for 6 weeks, I've been trying to hire a VA, you guys, which has taken hours and hours and hours of my time that I already don't have, because I'm losing mine, who has been integral to my business for 2 or 3 years now. And I really need to hire like 2 VAs, and I'm trying to onboard a couple of project attorneys at the same time. So it's just been nuts, along with, other just life things. But Marilyn, you're on my list. I apologize that things are taking me like so much longer than I even anticipate. And part of it was this unexpected loss of my VA. And then hiring one, onboarding one, and having to lose her again. So it's just craziness. The world is crazy and it's stressful for a lot of people right now. And it means there are a lot of unexpected bumps. Kathleen, let's try to get to your question. I see your hand raised.
Hello.
Let's see.
I know you came in late. I was on a different call, and then, but I wasn't feeling really good. So I went off that one, and then I came on you.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I just want to say that I don't know. All I know is that the original ADA, when speaking about deaf people, it had certain requirements about, like in certain places you have to have a interpreter. Well, see, when that was in 1990, so there was no internet then. So my point is, captioning is a form of interpreting, and it's considered reasonable accommodation for television. So I just like to make the the point that we are using the internet like television. So we should assume that we have to do it. Now, I will say for a long time, it was pretty easy within Zoom, for example. Even for live things, they would generally, it would caption, but now they make me go in and activate live captions.
On your side.
And it's a separate thing underneath the photograph. Underneath, it's not actually inside the window, like when you have a regular video.
It's outside of it.
So it is very problematic because it doesn't adjust size. Like if I adjust the window size, that thing doesn't adjust right.
Yeah.
And it will stay too big for the window. So it's a pain to me. But I'm just saying that, and I don't know how you actually, I know it can be activated on you guys' end somehow, but I have tried to look it up and figured it out myself.
Yeah.
I cannot figure out how you would do it. And they also took some choice away from me, inside the settings, they took some choice away from me as a user to do certain things with how it looks.
Yeah.
And stuck it inside the video, which I actually hate having it in the video because now it's like an individual thing. It's not in the settings. So every video.
Yeah.
Because I want it to be the same in every video.
Right.
So I'm just mentioning it that it is and I'm not just mentioning it to you. When I'm on YouTube, I'm always telling people to activate it.
Yeah. Well, so
because I know people who are deaf.
Right.
And I'm always saying they want the same information, so they need to have the same information.
Well, it's interesting that you say it's activated from the end user side, because like when I go into accessibility, I'm in Zoom's accessibility settings right here. My closed captioning is on, right? So I actually.
Okay, yeah, you have closed captioning on, but I think you have to actually, I would have to request it. Then you send me a message and I activate it on specifically for me. But I do know there's a way for it to show up on the bottom, but I don't see it listed as available for me to turn on.
Yeah, well, I'll have to.
And it's very rarely that it's on by anyone on Zoom, in Zoom, because not most people know that it's even available.
Yeah.
So I've only really had it used one time. But I will say when you're in Facebook, you know, the person can set it up and it will come on automatically when they're doing a live. Because I don't go on Facebook that often, but I have for a couple of people and it's shown up.
Yeah.
Even when it's not doing it on YouTube, when they're doing the simulcast.
No, and
it's very weird.
Yeah, certain platforms are better. It's interesting that I have it turned on, but like I will have to do some additional research to see how it actually works. I think you're right. It's probably end user settings.
Get into settings and then I will see. Let me go in.
Kathleen, really quick, just out of respect for time, I apologize, but I've got to go get my son for lunch. So I went a few minutes over the hour.
Oh, okay, goodbye.
Thank you. Good to see you. Great to see everybody on this call.
And I had another question, but I can ask that next month.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. Have a very happy holiday. We'll hopefully see you guys in the new year. Okay, bye-bye.